Yeah, I should start here. Start. Thank you all for coming to this press. We have called this very urgent and important press, particularly regarding and concern the lives of garment workers. Now, as you will all know, in another 2 weeks' time, we will be celebrating Women's Day. And on Women's Day, there are many events which will happen where people will talk about violence against women, people will talk about safety of women, people will speak about women's rights and agencies and so on. But on the very same day and the days after that, it will be business as usual, where women will be subjected to different forms of violence and harassment, whether it be at home, whether it be at the workplace, or whether it be in public places. The violence which is faced by garments, which are faced by garment workers, is something which always happens, but which is something hidden and covered, and people don't like to speak about it because it concerns the export, our country's export sector, and because it concerns dollars. So therefore, no one wants to speak about the violence which are faced by workers, particularly in the garment sector, the plantation sector, and so on. And as a result, this individual, this invisible labor force, garment workers, have been facing harassment on a regular basis. So much so that unions who work with the garment sector workers would say that harassment is built into the production process. Harassment is part and parcel of the production process. And on a regular day, if you speak to a garment worker, she will tell you that targets are too high, that they don't have time to drink water, that they do not have time to use the washroom, and some days they don't even have time to breathe properly. So this is the regular working condition under which garment workers work. But sometimes this violence becomes extreme, and then you find a garment worker dying, the death of a garment worker. And when a garment worker dies, then we all pause. We must all pause. And we must wonder what has actually gone wrong with the production process, with the export sector, which we pride ourselves in, which we say, oh, these are the workers who are bringing us dollars. But suddenly a worker is dead. So at that point, we must all pause and wonder what exactly is happening in this sector, which is bringing so much dollars into our country. So I must speak of a topic which people do not want to cover, which is the death of a garment worker, Paramasivam Pushpalata, who died in a Brandix factory last year. Before she died, she had spoken to three witnesses, and she has very clearly stated to those three witnesses that she had repeatedly asked the supervisor to allow her to leave home because she was not feeling well, to seek medical treatment, to allow her to leave home. But she was not allowed. And as a result, on the very same day, she died. Now, after her death, the compensation or the money which was offered by Brandix was a mere 1,70,000 rupees. And that is when workers from the Avisavala factory of Brandix contacted the Commercial and Industrial Workers Union and asked us to intervene in this matter. And since then, we have been asking Brandix, we have been asking brands like Victoria's Secret to get involved in this matter, to be held accountable, the life of Paramasivam Pushpalata. But instead of engaging constructively, instead of pausing and wondering what exactly has gone wrong with their own production process which they have built, instead of pausing and wondering what happens when a worker dies in one of our own factories, in one of their own factories, they have resorted to engaging in intimidatory tactics. Workers who have spoken out have been intimidated by Brandix. Union organizers who have spoken as who have gone there to engage in union activities have been subjected to severe threat and harassment. In fact, two organizers of the Commercial Industrial Workers Union, when they were distributing leaflets in the Avisavala zone, men who were wearing Brandix t-shirts and shirts came and threatened them with death and rape and violence. And we have already informed this to Brandix. We've already made complaints to the Avisavala police. But to date, we are not aware of any investigation which has taken place, whether inside Brandix or by the Avisavala police. And similarly, I am the president of the Commercial Industrial Workers Union. And we as the Commercial Industrial Workers Union, we filed a complaint on behalf of the husband of Paramasivam Pushpalata to the Human Rights Commission. And instead of dealing with these legal processes, Brandix has decided to send a letter to me asking me why I decided to file this complaint to the Human Rights Commission, stating the facts which I have stated, which they have claimed are false facts. And of course, threatening me with the usual slap litigations, which we find corporates threatening unions and other social movements, which they threaten us with legal actions, hoping that we will become afraid and we will stop speaking about this horrendous violence which a worker was subjected to and ultimately resulted in a death. So once again, I bring your attention to the fact that this is not the first time companies like Brandix have subjected garment workers to this kind of violence. You remember in 2020, the second wave of COVID actually broke out in a garment factory, in a Brandix factory. And even at that time, we met the Brandix management and we told them, one of the reasons these incidents keeps happening again and again is because in your factories, you do not allow women to exercise agency. You do not allow women to actually speak about the working conditions. You do not allow women to form and join trade unions, which is protected and allowed by the Constitution. It's not a charity. It's a right which is allowed by the Constitution and which is denied to garment workers. So we met Brandix and told them that if you do not take stock of your own work culture, you will be seeing deaths of workers. And today, unfortunately, what we have predicted in 2020 has come true with the garment work. So we once again, as the Commercial Industrial Workers Union and as unions and civil society movement, as people who are standing here at the press, we are urging Brandix to take accountability for their own work culture, to not treat workers, Brandix as well as brands like Victoria's Secret, to take accountability for their work culture, to take accountability for the lives of workers. And workers are not mere production objects where you can just use them and dispose them simply because they are being used for, or they are people who are producing for our export sector. So their lives, these workers have lives, these workers have families, these workers have children, and they have dreams and hopes. And this is only a workplace. The factory is only a workplace, and that does not give right to factories like Brandix as well as brands like Victoria's Secret to treat workers, particularly female workers, lives as is possible. So once again, I bring your attention back to the fact that we will be celebrating Women's Day. And when we celebrate Women's Day, you must remember that in this country, we do not have occupational health and safety laws. Since 2007, these laws have been pending, taking dust somewhere, and not the government has not passed this occupational health and safety law. To this date, this country does not have an workplace anti-harassment law. And to date, this country does not recognize the right of workers, and particularly garment workers, the right to form and join the trade union. And this right is consistently violated in the factory floor. So I hope you remember this when you celebrate this year's Women's Day. And as the Commercial Industrial Workers Union, we call out towards branding, we call out to state agencies, and we call out to brands like Victoria's Secret. And we are holding them accountable the death, for the life and death, for the death of Paramasivam Pushpala. Thank you. இந்த ஊடக சந்திப்புக்கு வந்த அனைவருக்கும் நமது நன்றிகள். கமர்ஷியல் அண்ட் இண்டஸ்ட்ரியல் ஒர்க்கர்ஸ் யூனியனாக நாங்கள் இந்த ஊடக சந்திப்பை அழைப்பதற்கான பிரதானமான காரணம், இன்னும் 2 கிழமைகளில் பெண்கள் தினத்தை நாங்கள் கொண்டாடுவோம். பெண்கள் தினத்தை கொண்டாடும் பொழுது பெண்களின் உரிமைகள் தொடர்பாக கதைப்போம், பெண்கள் முகம் கொடுக்கின்ற வன்முறைகளை பற்றி கதைப்போம், பெண்களுக்கு மேலும் உரிமைகளும் பாதுகாப்புகளும் வழங்கப்பட வேண்டும் என்று கூறி அனைத்து சமுதாயத்திலிருந்து அனைத்து மட்டங்களிலும் பேசப்படும். ஆனால் அன்றைய தினம் கூட, அடுத்தடுத்து வருகின்ற தினங்களில் கூட இவ்வாறாக பாதுகாக்கப்பட வேண்டிய பெண்கள் வீடுகளிலும் வேலைத்தளங்களிலும் பொது இடங்களிலும் வன்முறைக்கு உள்ளாக்கப்படுவார்கள். அப்போது உள்ளாக்கப்படும் பொழுது இதே, அதாவது பெண்களின் உரிமைகளை பற்றி கதைத்த இதே தளங்கள் அமைதியாக இருக்கும். இதுதான் நாங்கள் கண்ட வரலாறு. பெண் தொழிலாளர்களை பற்றி பேசும் பொழுது அவர்கள் ஒரு சமூகத்தின் ஒரு திரைக்கு பின்னால் இருக்கின்ற ஒரு குழுவினர் என்றே கூறலாம். தினந்தோறும் அவர்கள், அது ஆடை தொழிற்சாலைகளாக இருந்தால் என்ன, அல்லது தோட்ட தொழிலாளர்களாக இருந்தால் என்ன, தினமும் அவர்கள் வேலை தளங்களிலே வன்முறைக்கு உள்ளாக்கப்படுகின்றார்கள். ஆனால் இந்த வன்முறையை பற்றி நாங்கள் சமூகங்களில் வந்து வெளிப்படையாக கதைப்பதில்லை. காரணம், இவர்களை இந்த வன்முறைக்கு உள்ளாக்குகின்றவர்கள் சமூகத்திலே உயர்மட்டங்களில் இருக்கின்ற இந்த கம்பெனிகள். அதனால்தான் நாங்கள் இதனை பற்றி வெளிப்படையாக பேசுவதில்லை. ஆனால் சில வேளைகளில் இந்த வன்முறை மிகவும் ஒரு கொடூரமான அளவுக்கு சென்று ஒரு தொழிலாளி இறக்கும் அளவுக்கு இந்த வன்முறை செல்கின்றது. அப்பொழுதென்றாலும் சமூகம் ஒரு கணம் நின்று நாங்கள் நமது தொழிலாளர்களை நாங்கள் எந்த அளவுக்கு வன்முறைக்கு உள்ளாக்குகின்றோம் என்ற விடயத்தை பற்றி நாங்கள் யோசிக்க வேண்டும் என்பதைத்தான் எமது தொழிற்சங்கங்களாகவும் சிவில் அமைப்புகளாகவும் நாங்கள் நின்று உங்களிடம் கேட்டுக்கொள்ள விரும்புகின்றோம். அதே போன்றுதான் போன வருடம் அக்டோபர் மாதம் பரமசிவம் புஷ்பலதா என்ற ஒரு ஆடை தொழிற்சாலையில் வேலை செய்கின்ற ஒரு பெண், டண்டிஸ் தொழிற்சாலையில் வேலை செய்கின்ற பெண், அவர் அன்று நாள் காலையில் இருந்து அக்டோபர் 10ஆம் தேதி காலையில் இருந்து தனக்கு சுகமில்லை, தன்னை வீட்டுக்கு அனுப்புமாறு தனது மேற்பார்வையாளரிடம் கேட்டுக்கொண்டிருந்த போதிலும் அவரை மாலை வரைக்கும் வைத்து அவரை தாகத்தை அடைய வேண்டும் என்பதற்காக அவரை மாலை வரைக்கும் வைத்த பின்பே அந்த கம்பெனி, டண்டிஸ் கம்பெனி, அவரை வைத்தியசாலைக்கு அனுப்புகிறது. அதே நாள் பரமசிவம் புஷ்பலதா இறந்து செல்கின்றார். இறந்த பின்பு அவருக்கு கொடுக்கப்படுகின்ற ஒரே பணத்தொகையானது 1,70,000 ரூபாய். டண்டிஸ் நிறுவனமானது இந்த குடும்பத்துக்கு கொடுக்கின்ற ஒரே ஒரு நிவாரண பணத்தொகையானது 1,70,000 ரூபாய். எனவே எமது நாட்டிற்கு டாலர்களை கொண்டு வருகின்ற ஆடை தொழிலாளர்களின் பெறுமதி 1,70,000 ரூபாய் மட்டுமா என்பது நாங்கள் கேட்க வேண்டிய முதலாவது. இரண்டாவது, இந்த சம்பவம் நடந்த பின்பு அந்த அவிசாவளை தொழிற்சாலையில் இருந்த தொழிலாளர்கள் எமது தொழிற்சங்கத்திடம் வந்து இந்த குடும்பத்துக்கு நீதியும் நியாயம் பெறுவதற்காக எமக்காக பேசுங்கள் என்று கேட்டபடினால் எமது தொழிற்சங்கம் இந்த போராட்டத்திற்குள் இறங்கியது. போராட்டத்திற்குள் இறங்கிய பின்னர் எமது தொழிற்சங்கத்தின் மீது பல அச்சுறுத்தல்களை பிராண்டிக்ஸ் வழங்கியுள்ளது. உதாரணமாக எமது எமது செயற்பாட்டாளர்கள், தொழிற்சங்க செயற்பாட்டாளர்கள் அவிசாவளை பொது வீதியில் இருந்து லீப்லெட்ஸ் டிஸ்ட்ரிபியூட் பண்ணி கொண்டிருக்கிற நேரம் பிராண்டிக்ஸ் டிஷர்ட்ஸையும் ஷர்ட்ஸையும் அணிந்த தொழிலாளர்கள் எமது செயற்பாட்டாளர்களிடம் வந்து நாங்கள் உங்களை பாலியல் வன்முறை செய்வோம், நாங்கள் உங்களை கொலை செய்வோம் என்று கூறி அச்சுறுத்தல் விடுத்திருந்தனர். அப்பொழுது அதனை பற்றி நாங்கள் பிராண்டிக்ஸிடமும் முறைப்பாடு செய்திருந்தோம், அவிசாவளை போலீசாரிடமும் முறைப்பாடு செய்திருந்தோம். ஆனால் இன்று வரைக்கும் எந்த விதமான நடவடிக்கையும் எடுக்கப்படவில்லை என்பது குறிப்பிடத்தக்கது. அடுத்ததாக வர்த்தக மற்றும் தொழில்துறை தொழிலாளர் சங்கத்தின் தலைவராக இருக்கும் எனக்கு நான் எதற்காக மனித உரிமை ஆணைக்குழுக்கு சென்று முறைப்பாடு செய்தேன் இது தொடர்பாக என்று கூறியும் ஒரு சட்ட கடிதம் அனுப்பப்பட்டிருந்தது. அது மட்டும் இல்லாமல் இதற்கு மேலும் நான் இது தொடர்பாக நான் பொது வழிகளில் பேசிக் கொண்டிருந்தேனால் எனக்கு எதிராகவும் சட்ட நடவடிக்கை எடுக்கப்படும் என்று கூறி ஒரு அச்சுறுத்தல் கடிதம் ஒன்று பிராண்டிக்ஸ் நிறுவனத்திலிருந்து அனுப்பப்பட்டிருந்தது. அதைவிட பிராண்டிக்ஸ் நிறுவனத்திற்குள் இது தொடர்பாக பேசிக் கொண்டிருக்கின்ற தொழிலாளர்களையும் அவர்கள் இதை பற்றி பேசக்கூடாது என்று கூறி பிராண்டிக்ஸ் நிறுவனம் ஒரு ஒடுக்குமுறையும் அடக்குமுறையும் இந்த நிறுவனத்திற்குள் கொண்டு செல்கிறது. எனவே நாங்கள் கேட்க வேண்டிய விடயம் என்னவென்றால், உண்மையாகவே நீங்கள் எந்த விதமான பிள்ளையும் செய்திருக்காவிட்டால் எதற்காக உங்களுக்கு தொழிற்சங்கத்துடன் பேச முடியாது? எதற்காக அந்த அந்த பரமேஸ்வரம் புஷ்பலதாவின் குடும்பத்தினருடன் பேசி நாங்கள் உங்களுக்கு சரியான முறையில் ஒரு நட்டஈடை வழங்குகிறோம், நாங்கள் இதனை பிள்ளையா செய்து விட்டோம், சரியான முறையிலே நாங்கள் உங்களுக்கு ஒரு நட்டஈடை வழங்குவோம் என்று கூறி அவர்களுக்கு கூற முடியாது. இனிமேலும் இவ்வாறான சம்பவங்கள் பிராண்டிக்ஸில் நடக்கக்கூடாது என்று கூறி அவர்களுக்கு ஏன் கூற முடியாது? ஆனால் அவ்வாறு செய்யாமல் இவ்வாறான அச்சுறுத்தல் முறைகளில் அவர்கள் ஈடுபட்டுக் கொண்டிருக்கிறார்கள். ஆனால் பிராண்டிக்ஸ் போன்ற நிறுவனங்கள் இது அல்ல முதல் முறையாக இவ்வாறான ஒரு தொழிலாளர்களை ஒரு பாதுகாப்பற்ற ஒரு இடத்துக்கு தள்ளுவது. இது முதன்முறையான சம்பவம் அல்ல. உங்களுக்கு தெரியும், 2020ஆம் ஆண்டு 2வது கோவிட் அலையானது ஒரு பிராண்டிக்ஸ் ஃபேக்டரி தொழிற்சாலையில் இருந்தே 2வதான கோவிட் அலை வந்தது என்பதையும் உங்களுக்கு நான் ஞாபகப்படுத்த விரும்புகிறேன். அந்த வழியில் கூட தொழிற்சங்கங்களாக நாங்கள் பிராண்டிக்ஸ் நிறுவனத்திடம் பேசி தொழிலாளர்களை ஒரு சுதந்திரமாக பணிபுரிய விடுங்கள், தொழிலாளர்களை சுதந்திரமாக பேச விடுங்கள், தொழிலாளர்களை சுதந்திரமாக தொழிற்சங்கங்களை நிறுவ விடுங்கள், இது அவரது அரசியல் யாப்பினால் கொடுக்கப்பட்ட உரிமை. இந்த உரிமையை நீங்கள் தொழிலாளர்கள் வழங்காவிட்டால் மீண்டும் 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 இவ்வாறான சம்பவங்கள் உங்களது தொழிற்சாலைகளில் ஏற்படும் என்று கூறி நாங்கள் அன்று கூறியது இன்று உண்மையாக இருப்பது என்பது மிகவும் கவலைக்குரிய விடயம். எனவே தான் நாங்கள் பிராண்டிக்ஸ் போன்ற ஆடை தொழிற்சாலைகளையும் விக்டோரியா சீக்ரெட்ஸ் போன்ற பிராண்ட்ஸையும் அதே போன்று நமது அரசாங்கத்தையும் கேட்கின்றோம். நீங்கள் தொழிலாளர் தினத்தன்று அல்லது பெண்கள் தினத்தன்று பெண்களை பாதுகாப்போம், பெண்களுக்கு உரிமைகள் இருக்கின்றது என்று கூறி பெண்கள் தினத்தன்று சும்மா வந்து பேசிக்கொண்டு இருக்காமல் இன்று நமது நாட்டிலே தொழிலாளர்களை பாதுகாப்பதற்கான தொழிலாளர் சட்டங்கள், ஆக்குபேஷனல் ஹெல்த் அண்ட் சேஃப்டி சட்டங்கள் எமது சட்ட புத்தகங்கள் இல்லை. இன்று எமது நாட்டிலே பெண் தொழிலாளர்கள் ஒரு துன்புறுத்தலுக்கு உள்ளாகும் பொழுது, தொழில் இடங்களில் துன்புறுத்தலுக்கு உள்ளாகும் பொழுது அவர்களை பாதுகாப்பதற்கான தொழில் சட்டங்கள் எமது நாட்டிலே இல்லை. இந்த சட்டங்களை உடனடியாக கொண்டு வர வேண்டும் என்றும், அதே போன்று நாங்கள் பிராண்டிக்ஸ் நிறுவனம் கேட்கின்றோம். இந்த பிள்ளையோடு நடந்து விட்டது, அந்த பிள்ளையை திருத்துவதற்கு நீங்கள் என்ன செய்ய போகிறீர்கள்? அந்த குடும்பத்துடன் கதைத்து அவர்களுக்கு சரியான முறையில் நக்கலிடை கொடுக்க போகின்றீர்களா? இதற்கு மேலும் இவ்வாறான சம்பவங்கள் நடக்காமல் இருப்பதற்கு நீங்கள் தொழிற்சங்கங்களை சுதந்திரமாக தொழில் இடங்களிலே நிறுவுவதற்கு நீங்கள் விட போகின்றீர்களா? அதே போன்றுதான் நாங்கள் விக்டோரியா சீக்ரெட்ஸ் போன்ற பிராண்டிடம் கேட்கின்றோம். இனிமேலும் எமது தொழிலாளர்கள் உங்களது லாபத்திற்கான பயன்படுத்தப்படுகின்ற ஆப்ஜெக்ட்ஸ் அல்ல, இயந்திரங்கள் அல்ல என்ற விடயத்தையும் நாங்கள் இவ்வாறான பிராண்ட்ஸுக்கும் மேம்படுத்திக் கொண்டு, இம்முறை பெண்கள் தினத்தை கொண்டாடும் பொழுது தொழில் இடங்களிலே மிகவும் கொடூரமான வன்முறைகளை முகம் கொடுத்துக் கொண்டிருக்கின்ற பெண் தொழிலாளர்களை பற்றியும் நீங்கள் நிச்சயமாக யோசிக்க வேண்டும் என்று நினைவுபடுத்திக் கொண்டு நான் இந்த பேச்சை கொண்டு வந்தேன். நன்றி.
මම අශිලා දන්දනිය ස්ටෑන්ඩ් අප් සේවක සංගමයේ නියෝජනය කරනවා. අද වාණිජ හා කාර්මික සේවක සංගමයේ විසින් එයාලා ඕගනයිස් කරපු මේ යුනියන් එක සම්බන්ධව තියෙන ප්‍රශ්නය තම පුෂ්පලතා සහෝදරියගේ මරණය සම්බන්ධව අද මම කතා කරන්න එයාලත් එක්ක එකතු වෙලා ඉන්නවා. එතකොට මේ පුෂ්පලතා සහෝදරිය අවිස්සාවේලා බ්‍රැන්ඩික්ස් ආයතනයේ මේ ඇයගේ මරණය අපට පැහැදිලිව පෙන්눔 කරනවා බ්‍රැන්ඩික්ස් වගේ ඇඟලුම් ආයතනවල තියෙන බරපතල සූරාකෑම සහ වහල් පාලනය සම්බන්ධව. අපිට පැහැදිලිව මේ මරණය දිගින් දිගටම පෙන්눔 කරේ මේ ෆැක්ටරිය ඇතුලේ ක්‍රියාත්මක වෙන සේවකයන්ගේ සූරාකෑම සහ ඔවුන් බරපතල විදියට පාලනයට නතු කරලා ඔවුන්ගේ නිදහස සහ ඔවුන්ගේ මූලික අයිතිවාසිකම් උල්ලංඝනය කිරීම සම්බන්ධව. එතකොට පුෂ්පලතා සහෝදරිය ඔක්තෝබර් 10 වෙනිදා නිවාඩු ඉල්ලනවා ඇයට අසනීප තත්ත්වයක් තියෙන නිසා ගෙදර යන්න කියලා. හැබැයි මොකද්ද ෆැක්ටරියේ සුපර්වයිසර් කියන්නේ ඇයට යන්න දෙන්න බෑ. මොකද ෆැක්ටරියේ ඒ මොහොතේ ඒ ප්‍රොඩක්ෂන් ලයින් එකේ ටාගට් එක කවර් කරන්න තියෙන නිසා කියලා. එතකොට අපි දන්නවා මේ ටාගට් එක කවර් කිරීම නිසා ටාගට් එක කවර් කරන්න මේ සේවකයන් පෙළඹවීම එහෙම නැත්නම් ඕම් කල්ලු කිරීම මත සේවකයන් අඩුම තරමේ වැසිකිළියට යන්නේ නැහැ. වැසිකිළියට යන්න වෙන නිසා ඔවුන් වතුර බොන්නේ නැහැ. ඔවුන් තවන්ත හිමි වෙලා තියෙන පැය භාගයක දිවාහාර කාලය ගත කරන්නේ නැහැ. මොකද ඒවා කරොත් ඔවුන්ට ටාගට් එක කවර් කරන්න බෑ. ටාගට් එක කවර් කරේ නැත්නම් ඔවුන්ට හම්බ වෙන වැටුපෙන් ඔවුන්ට ජීවත් වෙන්න බෑ. එතකොට රැකියාව සම්බන්ධව බරපතල වීතිකාවක් වැටුප සම්බන්ධ බරපතල ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙනවා මේ ෆැක්ටරිය ඇතුලේ. හැමතිස්සෙම රටක් හැටියට මේ ඇඟලුම් කර්මාන්ත ශාලාවලින් එන ආදායම සම්බන්ධව කතා කරනවා. හැබැයි මේක පිටුපස්සේ ඉන්න සේවකයන්ට මොකද්ද වෙලා තියෙන්නේ කියන එක ගැන කතා කරන්නේ නැහැ. මේ පුෂ්පලතා සහෝදරියගේ ප්‍රශ්නය, ඇයගේ මරණය මේ ෆැක්ටරිය ඇතුලේ තියෙන ඉතාම පීඩිත පාලනය සම්බන්ධව ඔවුන්ට සිද්ධ වෙන හැරස්මන්ට් සම්බන්ධව බරපතල විදියට එළියට මතු කරන අවස්ථාවක්. එතකොට මේ පාලකයන් මේ ෆැක්ටරි වල පාලකයන් මොනතරම් බරපතල විදියට සේවකයන්ගේ නැගිටීම හඬ පාලනය කරනවද කියනවනම් පුෂ්පලතා සහෝදරියගේ මරණයෙන් පස්සේ ඇයට යුක්තිය ඉෂ්ට කරගන්න හදන සම්පූර්ණ ක්‍රියාවලියම කඩකප්පල් කරන්න බරපතල විදියට උත්සාහ කරන බවක් අපිට පෙනී යනවා. ඒකේ පළවෙනි එක සිද්ධියක් තමයි මේ වෘත්තීය සමිතිය විසින් මේ පුෂ්පලතා සහෝදරියගේ මරණය සම්බන්ධව යුක්තිය ඉෂ්ට කර ගැනීමේ මූලික පියවරක් ඇටියට අත්පත්‍රිකාවක් බෙදා හරිති. ඒක බ්‍රැන්ඩික්ස් ආයතනයේ යුනිෆෝම් එකෙන් ආපු කට්ටියක් මේ බලපෑම් කරනවා ඔවුන් මරණ බවට ඔවුන් දූෂණය කරන බවට කොච්චර බරපතල මේ බලපෑමක්ද මේක. පොලිසියට පැමිණිල්ලක් දැම්මට ඒක සම්බන්ධව සාධාරණයක් ඉෂ්ට වෙන්නේ නැහැ. ෆැක්ටරිය මේක සම්බන්ධව කිසිදු දෙයක් ප්‍රකාශ කරන්නේ නැහැ. ඒක නෙමෙයි මේක සම්බන්ධව වැඩ කරන වෘත්තීය සමිතියේ සභාපතිනියට බලපෑම් කරලා වැරදි අසත්‍ය ප්‍රකාශ කරන බවට බලපෑම් කරලා මේක නවත්ත කියලා බලපෑම් කරලා ලියු කියවනවා. බ්‍රැන්ඩික්ස් ආයතනයේ මොනතරම් බලපෑම් මේ සම්බන්ධව තියෙන්නේ. රටේ පවතින නීතියට පටහැනින නීතිය අතහැරගෙන තවත් මේ යුක්තිය වෙනුවෙන් වැඩ කරන කණ්ඩායමකට වෘත්තීය සමිතියකට බලපෑම් කරන්න තරම් බලයක් කොහොමද බ්‍රැන්ඩික්ස් වගේ ආයතන වලට ආවේ? එතකොට අපිට හිතා ගන්න පුළුවන් සේවකයන්ට මොනතරම් බලපෑමක් ෆැක්ටරිය ඇතුලේ කරනවද කියලා. එතකොට අපිට මේක විතරක් නෙමෙයි. මීට කලින් සඳහන් කළා සස්තිකා සහෝදරී කතාවේදී. බ්‍රැන්ඩික්ස් ආයතනයේ තමයි කොවිඩ් වසංගත තත්ත්වයේදී ඇඟලුම් කර්මාන්ත ශාලාවල මේ සේවකයන්ට කොවිඩ් විවක්ත වෙන්න ලොකු උකුලක් වෙන ආකාරයේ වැරදි ක්‍රියාමාර්ගවල නියැලුනේ. මේක සම්බන්ධව අපි වෘත්තීය සමිතිය විදියට සිවිල් සොසයිටි විදියට කතා කරද්දි මොකද ඒ වෙලාව වුනේ? ඒ වෙලාවේ බරපතල බලපෑමක් සිද්ධ කරා බ්‍රැන්ඩික්ස් ආයතනය විසින්. මොකද්ද මේ තියෙන බ්‍රැන්ඩික්ස් ආයතනයේද? රටේ නීතියට පටහැනිව කටයුතු කරන්න. සේවකයන්ගේ ජීවිත පිළිබඳ අයිතිය අතකරගෙන කටයුතු කරන්න. සේවකයන් හිංසන කරන්න. ඔවුන් ඔයගේ බරපතල ටික සූරා ගන්න. ඔබට බලපෑම් කරන්න. එතකොට මේ සිද්ධියේදී අපේ යුක්තිය සම්බන්ධව බරපතල ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙනවා. මේ රටේ නීතිය කොහොමද ක්‍රියාත්මක වෙන්නේ? මේ රටේ ආයතනවල පාලකයන්ට කොහොමද මේ නීතිය ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන්න නීතිය අතකරගෙන කටයුතු කරන්න බලය දීලා තියෙන්නේ කියලා. ඒක නිසා අපි බරපතල විදියට වෘත්තීය සමිතිය විදියට මේ වෙලාවේ රජයට කියා සිටිනවා. වහාම මේක සම්බන්ධව අවධානයෙන් කටයුතු කරන්න. මේ වෙලාවේ මේ පුෂ්පලතා සහෝදරීන්ට යුක්තිය ඉෂ්ට කිරීම හරහා සේවකයන්ට ඇඟලුම් කර්මාන්ත වල වැඩ කරන බරපතල ආකාරයේ ප්‍රශ්න රාශියකට උත්තර හොයාගන්න සිද්ධ වෙලා තියෙනවා. මේ ප්‍රශ්න මග හැරමින් යන කාරණාව උඩ සේවකයන් ජීවිතවලින් මර්ධි ගෙවමින් ඉන්නවා. ඒක නිසා වහාම රජය මේක අවධානය යොමු කර යුතුයි. ඒ වගේම මාධ්‍ය සගයන්ට අපි කියනවා මේ වගේ ප්‍රබල ආයතන වලට විරුද්ධව ඒක නැත්නම් ඒ ආයතන වලට විරුද්ධව නෙමෙයි ඇත්තට මම මේ කතා කරන්නේ. සේවකයන්ගේ යුක්තිය සම්බන්ධව. එතකොට මෙවැනි රටේ විදේශ විනිමය කියන සේවකයන්ගේ යුක්තිය සම්බන්ධව කතා කරන අවස්ථාවලදී මේ මාධ්‍ය විසින් ඔවුන්ගේ වගකීම හරියට ඉෂ්ට කරයි කියලා අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා. ඒක නිසා මේ සිද්ධිය හුදකලා සිද්ධියක් නෙමෙයි. ගාමන්ට් ෆැක්ටරි ඇතුලේ මේ රටට විදේශ විනිමය ගේන සහෝදර සහෝදරියන්ගේ ජීවිතවල තියෙන හඳුරු කතාව සහ ඔවුන්ගේ ජීවිතවල තියෙන ඇත්ත පැතිකඩයි මේ ප්‍රශ්නේ ඇතුලේ අපි ඉස්සරහට ගේන්නේ. ඒ වගේම මේ ලෝකයේ තියෙන ප්‍රධාන සන්නාමකරුවන් වික්ටෝරියා සීක්‍රට්ස් වගේ ප්‍රධාන සන්නාමකරුවන් ඔවුන්ගේ චර්යා ධර්ම පද්ධති වල ඉතාම ලස්සන සුන්දර වාක්‍ය කියනවා සේවකයන්ගේ අයිතිවාසිකම් සම්බන්ධ. හැබැයි ඒවා පිටුපස්සේ ඇත්ත කතාව තමයි මේ සිද්ධ වෙමින් පවතින්නේ. ඒක නිසා මේක හුදකලා සිද්ධියක් නෙමෙයි. එක සිද්ධියකට සීමා කරලා බැහැර කරන්න පුළුවන් සිද්ධියක් නෙමෙයි. මේ වගේ සිද්ධි පිටුපස්සේ සේවකයන්ගේ අහිමි වීම රාශියක්. ඔවුන් බරපතල විදියට ඔවුන්ව සූරාකෑම් සිද්ධ වෙන ආකාරය. එහෙම නැත්නම් ඔවුන් වහල් වගේ මේ නිෂ්පාදන ක්‍රියාවලිය වෙනුවෙන් පාවිච්චි කරන ආකාරය හරිම පැහැදිලිව පෙන්වන්න කරනවා. ඒක නිසා මේ සිද්ධිය අපිට බැහැර කරන්න බෑ. අපි මේකේ යුක්තිය වෙනුවෙන් මේ නෘත්‍ය සමිතියත් එක්ක එකතු වෙලා වැඩ කරනවා. සන්නාමකරුවන්ට මේක සම්බන්ධව පැහැදිලිව පෙනී ඉන්න කියලා බලපෑම් කරන්න අපි ඉදිරියට ලෑස්තියි. ස්තුතියි.
Subudansana, Roshan Fonseca, Mutti Samiti Andre. දැන් අපේ ස්වස්තිකා සහෝදරී කිව්වා වගේ අනික් සහෝදරී කිව්වා වගේ බ්‍රැන්ඩික්ස් ආයතනයේ සේවය කරපු අවුරුදු 44ක් වයස පුෂ්පලතා කියන සහෝදරී අම්මා දරුවෝ දෙන්නෙක්ගේ අම්මා අද නැති වෙලා මාස 4කට වැඩි කාලයක්. ඒ ස්වාමි පුරුෂයාට බිරිඳ නැති වෙලා ඒ දරුවන්ට අම්මා නැති. මොකක්ද මේ බ්‍රැන්ඩික්ස් ආයතනය කරන්නේ? කතා කරනකොට කියනවා occupational health and safety ගැන. නමුත් මේ ආයතනය තුල වැඩ කරමින් සිටින අතරතුර අසනීප තත්ත්වයකටපත් වෙලා නිවාඩු ඉල්ලලා මෙඩිකල් සෙන්ටර් එකට යන්න අවස්ථාවක් ඉල්ලලා අන්තිමට ආයතනයේ මගින්ම රජයේ ස්පිරිතාලයට ඇතුල් කරලා පැය ගාණක් ඇතුළත ඒ සහෝදරි ජීවිතක්ෂේප. අද වෙනකම් මරණයට හේතුවක් නැහැ. මේකට සම්බන්ධව රජයේ ආයතන තුනක් ප්‍රධාන වශයෙන් තියෙනවා. පොලිසිය තියෙනවා, සෞඛ්‍ය දෙපාර්තමේන්තුව තියෙනවා, සහ ලේබර් ඩිපාර්ට්මන්ට්. මොනවද මේ රජය කරන්නේ? මේ රජයේ පත්තුනේ කොහොමද? මේ රජයේ පත්තුනේ වැඩ කරන ජනතාව ගුරුවරු පීඩිත පන්තියේ මිනිස්සුගේ පත්තේද රජය. එතකොට සෞඛ්‍ය ඇමති, පොලිස් ඇමති, කම්කරු ඇමති මොනවද කරන්නේ? මේ බ්‍රැන්ඩික්ස් ආයතනයේ ෆැක්ටරි කීයක් තියෙනවද මේ රටේ? එක තැනකවත් වෘත්ති සමිතිය තියෙනවද? නැහැ. මේ සම්බන්ධව මැදිහත් වෙන්න මේ වෘත්ති සමිතිය මැදිහත් වෙලා වැඩ කටයුතු කරද්දී ඒකේ ක්‍රියාදරයන්ට තර්ජනය කරමින් සභාපතිනියට සහ නායකයන්ට තර්ජනය කරමින් මොකද්ද මේ කරන්නේ? මං හිතන්නේ මේක පැහැදිලිවම තේරුම් ගත යුතු දෙයක්. එක්ක මේ ආයතන රජය මේ ආයතන වලට යට වෙනවා. එහෙම නැත්නම් මේ ආයතන වලට ඊට වැඩිය බලයක් තියෙනවා. අනෙක් එක මට කියන්න තියෙන්නේ මේ ආයතන වල වැඩ කරන පාලන අධිකාරිය මිනිස්සු මැනේජර්ලා ඒගොල්ලෝ දරු පවුල් නැද්ද? මහානක විතරද මේ රස්සාව? මේ මහාන මේ සන්නාම මහාන සහෝදරියන් සහෝදරයා තමුන්ගේ ජීවිතවලින් වන්ද ගෙවන්න. ඒවත් අපි විකුණන්නේ. ඩොලර් හම්බුනම ඔක්කොම හරියද? බරපතල ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙනවා. මං හිතන්නේ මේක මෙතන වෘත්ති සමිති කීපයක් සමාජ ක්‍රියාකාරී සම්බන්ධ වෙලා තියෙනවා. බ්‍රැන්ඩික්ස් ආයතනයේ හිතනවා නම් මේක එහෙම යටපත් කරන්න පුළුවන් කියලා එහෙම කරන්න. අපි මේක කරන්න එහෙම ඉඩ දෙන්නේ නැහැ. අපි මේකේ මේ සහෝදරියට වෙන්න ඕනේ සාධාරණ වෙනුවෙන් දෙකටම සටන් කරනවා. ඒ වගේම බ්‍රැන්ඩික්ස් ආයතනයේ උච්චර නිර්දෝෂී. ඒ වෘත්ති සමිතියක ගනුදෙනු කරන්න බැරි. ඒ ආයතනයේ තියෙන ෆැක්ටරි එකකවත් ඒ වෘත්ති සමිතිය නැත්තේ. මේ රජයේ බුද්ධිද? මේ ආයතන ලේබර් ඩිපාර්ට්මන්ට් බුද්ධිද? ඒගොල්ලන්ට තේරෙන්නේ නැද්ද? ගිහිල්ලා බලලා නිකන් රිපෝට් එකක් දීලා පොලිසිය කිසිම ක්‍රියාකාරකමක් කරන්නේ නෑ. මේවා තමයි ප්‍රශ්න. දැන් මේ සහෝදරිය කිව්වා තව සති දෙකකින් කාන්තාරදී. ජාත්‍යන්තර කාන්තාරදී. අපි පහුගිය දවස්වල C190 25 මොනවද තියෙන්නේ? කාන්තා හිංසනය, workplace harassment. ඇත්තටම මේක පුදුම සහගත තත්ත්වයක්. මිනිසුන්ට මෙච්චරම තමුන්ගේ රැකියාව කරන අර සහෝදරිය කිව්වා වගේ ඒ ටාගට් එක ගැහුවේ නැත්නම් ඒ පඩියට ලැබෙන්න ඕනේ දේ ලැබෙන්නේ. ඒක ලැබුණ නැත්නම් මේ මාසේ ජීවිකාව කරගෙන යන්න. එතකොට අඩුපඩිහින්ද මේ මිනිස්සු ඕටි කරන්න වෙන ටාගට් පස්සේ යන්න වෙලා තියෙනවා. අන්තිමට ජීවිතේ වන්දි ගෙවුණා. ඒකට නිසි පිළිවෙලක් නැහැ. අනිත් එක බ්‍රැන්ඩික්ස් ආයතනයේ අතෝද ගන්න බෑ මේකේ. අවුරුදු 13කට වැඩි සේවා කාලයක් තියෙන මේ පුෂ්පලතා සහෝදරිය ගේ මෙඩිකල් හිස්ටරි කරන් බලන්න මොනවද තියෙන්නේ කියලා. කිසිම රෙකෝඩ් එකක් නැහැ. එක්ක දෙකක් කියනවා. එක්ක ආයතනයේ කිසිම මෙඩිකල් ටෙස්ටිං කරලා නැහැ. එහෙම නැත්තම් මේ සහෝදරිය කිසිම ලෙඩක් තිබෙන්නේ නැහැ. එහෙම නැතිනේ. එහෙම සහෝදරිය ආයතන තුල අසනීප වෙලා. ආයතනයේ මගින්ම ස්පිරිතාලට ඇතුළත් කරලා පැය ගානක් ඇතුළත නැති වුණාට පස්සේ අද වෙනකොට මරණයට හේතුවක්. ඉතින් අපි පැහැදිලිව කියනවා මේ රජයට මේ ආයතනයට මේකට වෘත්තීය සමිතියත් එක්ක වැඩියක් වෙලා ගනුදෙනු කරන්න. එපමණක් නෙමෙයි. මේ මහාන සන්නාම බ්‍රෑන්ඩ්ස් මේක සම්බන්ධව වග කියන්න. ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ අත මෙහිදා ගන්න බෑ. කරුණාකරලා මේවට වැඩියක් වෙලා මේ කටයුතු වලට සහයෝගය දක්වන්න. ඒගොල්ලෝ නිර්දෝෂී නම් ඒගොල්ලන්ට කතා කරලා එවි නිර්දෝෂී බව පෙන්නන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ මේ වෘත්තීය සමිතියත් එක්ක උච්චර තියෙන මේක. ඒ වෘත්තීය සමිතිය පිටවන්න නොදෙන්නේ. මිනිසුන්ගේ අයිතිවාසිකම් වෙනුවෙන් කතා කරන්නේ මේ මිනිසුන්ට කැස්වීම. මූලික අයිතිවාසිකම්. ඒකවත් නැද්ද මේ බ්‍රැන්ඩික්ස් ආයේ. බොහොම කනගාටුයි. ඒ හින්දා අපි මේ සටන දිගටම ගන්න. බොහොම
Is there any questions? Prashna,
Few questions.
Yes.
One is, do we know actually what has happened to, what was the cause of death? There was no cause of death, but there can be something. Is it an open verdict? Or is there any, prior to the situation, was he undergoing any treatment? And the second, I want to know is, has at any point the company has officially said anything with regard to this death? Or spoken to any organization or only family members on this?
So, a few things. One is, what we know is there has been an open verdict. And Pushpalata's husband, Govindasamy Sivakumar, still has not gotten the death certificate. And there is a case ongoing in the Vanvala court with regards to the what happened, what transpired. So far we don't know the cause of death. As to how Brandix has been responding, so far they have officially only sent me a letter saying that we have been making false statements to the media. But what we have already informed Brandix, because we've had so this is the letter which they have sent me. But one of the things which I want to tell the media today is that the Commercial Industrial Workers Union, we have a long history of forming unions in factories. So Brandix is not the first factory or the last factory we would talk about union rights. We have unions in other factories also, and we have really good relationship with the management. So we don't have any issues with this is not the first union we are trying to form. But also, as a responsible union, we don't make statements without evidence. And there are two things which are very which I want to specifically mention, is that before Parameshwari Pushpalata died, she had spoken to 3 witnesses. And she has told the exact same thing to the 3 witnesses. She has said, from morning, I've been asking my supervisor to leave and go home because I was not feeling well, and I was not allowed to leave. And on top of that, workers have come and given sworn affidavits, telling us this is what we saw in the factory that day. So as a responsible union, in the absence of any evidence coming forth from Randex, we would be listening to the statement of workers. We would be listening to a worker who died who had spoken to 3 witnesses. That is our obligation to listen to workers when they are speaking. And lastly, what I want to say is companies like Brandix are protected by the very fact that they are exposed sector companies. And the system as a whole, whether it be the government, whether it be the media, the system as a whole tries to protect these companies from accountability. And the problem with that is we also want dollars coming into the house, into the country, right? We also want that. So as a union, we are not sabotaging production. But the problem with that is that behind these corporates, there are workers who are being treated horrendously. Like any government worker you speak to, the first thing she would tell you is the targets are too high, that she doesn't have time to drink water, and she doesn't have time. This is something which we consistently hear, and not only in the Brandis country, right? So what I would also request is that you can be an export sector company, and you can be producing for money, international brands and so on. But the people behind bringing dollars to this country are individual workers. And we as the union, our responsibility and our duty is to speak on behalf of these workers when they are subjected to horrendous violence, like what happened to Parameshwari Paramasivam Pushpalata. So that is what I would like to say, that no company, no factory should be above the law. No one should be above the law. Doesn't matter if you are an export sector company. Doesn't matter if you are a company which is bringing dollars into the country, because it is not you who is bringing dollars into the country. It is the workers who are working for you. Tomorrow, if all the government sector workers refuse to work and say we are striking against the harassment we are going through, our country will not be able to bring a single dollar into the country. Our country will not be able to bring a drop of petrol into the country. And we know the implications of that. So I think that is something which the government should remember. That is something which the government sector should remember. And that is something which even international brands like Victoria's Secret should remember.
Does this international brands have responsibility with regard to the government sector is not clear? Yeah, Bangladesh, Vietnam. So internationally, is there any binding by the brands?
So there has been moments and instances, like for instance, the Diltikal agreement, which came about in India, right? But the story behind the Diltikal agreement is about the fact that a government worker was subjected to rape and murder. So we don't have to wait till government workers are raped and killed before we come to responsible agreements. That's not what we're waiting for. So we are also speaking to international brands. And the wrong impression which companies like Brandix give out to people is that we are trying to sabotage, we are trying to stop orders. As a responsible union, we will never try to stop orders, because if a company closes down, if a factory closes down, then we also lose our members. A union cannot exist outside the workplace. So this is kind of like a propaganda which is carried out by companies which do not want to be held accountable under the law. But brands have been held accountable under various agreements under international, these are agreements which are formed between international trade unions, international organizations, local trade unions like ourselves, and of course brands and company suppliers. So there are instances like that which we have seen in the history of the garment trade also. But I think it's not enough. And the violence continues on the ground. And when it comes to countries like Sri Lanka and also other South Asian countries, but also countries like Sri Lanka, as Roshan was saying, Brandix has many plants in Sri Lanka, but not a single factory has a union. And that is telling of what kind of freedom of association and the right to form and join a trade union, which is guaranteed under the Constitution. Freedom of association is guaranteed under the Constitution, but more specifically, the right to form and join a trade union is guaranteed in the Fundamental Rights chapter of Sri Lanka. And this right is denied to every single Brandix worker, is something which we must remember.
Is other government countries allowed to have trade union?
There are some government factories which have trade unions. We know some government factories which have respected this constitutional right to form and join a trade union. But we also know other factories and companies which consistently violate this right to form and join a trade union. And it is also the impression they create about trade unions. When we speak to some workers, they think that if you're working inside the free trade zone workers do not have a right to form and join trade union, right? They would openly say this to us. අපිට බුද්ධි සමිතිය හදන්න බෑ. உங்களுக்கு தொழிற்சங்கம் கொண்டு உருவாக்க முடியாது. So this is an impression which we want to know where this idea is coming from. That if you are a worker inside the free trade zone, you do not have a right to form a trade union. Where does this idea come from? And I think it's not only factories, because factories obviously don't like to have accountability mechanisms. That's the nature of factories and production. But I think we also want to hold the government accountable, that we have had almost a 30-year period where unions have been consistently broken down and blacklisted even by agencies of the government. So I think the government has a responsibility, particularly a government like the NPP government, which came on the backs of the support of workers. They have a particular responsibility to ensure that workers know that they have a right to form and join a trade union. And if there is retaliation on the side of the company, it is illegal under the laws of Sri Lanka. Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much for coming. And we hope that your media institutions will cover this. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Back to work now. I'm getting that.